for?
Basically, this generation is more liberal, more tolerant, more Democrat-leaning than the one before. It's not just because they're young.
For another point of view, it's Hard News with Russell Brown and Wammo on Kiwi.
From publicaddress.net and also the Media 7 show on TVNZ7. Russell Brown, of course. Good morning, Russell.
Good morning.
Morning. First up, we're talking about the media reporting on Afghanistan, and in particular, the recent John Key trip over there. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's some criticisms can be made of that trip. It did end up looking like a PR opportunity, and I think one of the more unfortunate things John Key's ever said was when he declared to the journalists who had followed him over, "I'm not prepared to send people to a destination that I'm not prepared to come myself," which could be quite easily read as him putting himself in, comparing himself directly to soldiers who have to fight and genuinely risk their lives. Thought that was a rather silly thing to say. But the whole way this thing was run, there wasn't really a lot of journalism there. The journalists who got invited along were Guy and Espiner and Duncan Garner from TVNZ and TV3 respectively, NZPA's Maggie Tate, no one from Radio New Zealand, and of all people, Barry Soper, the gallery correspondent for News Talk ZB, who apparently got wind of the trip and demanded that he had to go too.
But he wasn't personally selected.
No.
Now, because while he was over there, I was talking to Russell Norman, and he was aware that these journalists were selected by John Key's staff to go as journalists that may be more friendly to whatever John Key was thinking about doing there. Yeah,
well, that may be the case. They certainly didn't do anything like, say, talk to any of the locals. They don't seem to have interviewed any Afghans at all. And have pretty much followed the line. They got to attend a Prime Ministerial press conference, which is something they can do most days of the week, and also talk to General Stanley McChrystal, who's the Commander of Forces, the US Commander of Forces in Afghanistan. It really did look highly, highly managed, and I don't think we got a lot out of it, apart from John Key's apparent about face. He's, once again, this sort of tendency to make policy at press conferences on a New Zealand commitment.
Yeah.
Both the SAS and the Reconstruction Force in Bamiyan for another 5 years. And literally a couple of days before he left, he told Patrick Gower at TV3 that they would all be coming home next year. Because the tour of duty had been, the commitment was concluded, and they were coming home. And for whatever reason, the Prime Minister abruptly changed his mind.
Okay.
And, apparently, this is all a bit of a surprise to officials back home, and there had to be a lot of scrambling around. And it is all kind of mysterious, and I think maybe a few more questions should have been asked about that.
Gosh, imagine if Obama was doing something similar
exactly.
to that. It would be huge. So, why aren't we seeing the news reports of those two pieces of video spliced together?
It's been hinted at. It hasn't really been made an issue of, and it does seem odd that it hasn't been. I'm sure John Stevenson, the New Zealand journalist we're having on Media 7 this week, will have something to say. He has been travelling to that region for 8.5 years under his own steam. I think that this most recent trip there, he took loans from friends and he pays them back. But he really does it on the seat of his pants, basically.
Yeah.
And he did some really interesting things. He went to Bamiyan and interviewed 100 people.
Wow.
For a poll on their impressions of the work the New Zealand troops are doing there, and discovered that while the locals appreciate the security provided by the New Zealand contingent there, they're not that impressed with the reconstruction effort, which is the thing that we hear about all the time. And Garth George went off his nut in the Herald last week saying, "How dare he do this? What a nonsense poll this is!" It's a little bit rich, given that it's 100 people is 100 more people than the 4 journalists that the taxpayers sent over managed to interview.
I tell you what TVNZ did get out of it were promos for the news hour.
No, there was lots of that, flak jackets, helicopters.
Yeah.
It looks great.
So that it could look like CNN or something.
It looks like CNN. Looks like there's real danger. I mean, there is. I mean, I've talked to Damien Christie about this, and there is a level at which it's, there is danger implicit in going to that country.
For sure.
But it's not. Yeah, they're not exactly out there in the field, put it that way.
No. And finally, the deal with Tuhoi that John Key has backed down on. What are we losing out on here?
Well, I mean, once again, this is looks like more like setting policy by press conference again, although apparently Tuhoi had been told and actually asked John Key last week to make the announcement that a key part of the treaty settlement that's been negotiated over the last 2 years with Tuhoi, which is that they would take transfer of title of the Urewera National Park, is off the table now. And that's been quite a surprise, to the extent that, as the Nation reported on Saturday, the memorial commemorative pens had already been inscribed. And that was going to be part of the agreement in principle. I really can't quite fathom here, but as I pointed out in the blog post yesterday, what this says is to the crazies is that the process, doing it right, negotiating, dealing with the government, won't work. And so maybe you should get back out there in the hills with some guns again.
Right, you're talking about the radicals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. And I think that's really unfortunate. And I can see that people would have some qualms about it, but it was interesting because we had our readers on the site saying, but I'm worried about this because I really like to tramp around Lake Waikiri Moana, which, surprise, surprise, is actually already owned by Tuhoi. That passed to Tuhoi ownership in 1973, and
Okay.
It goes back to the government, and no one really has been hurt at all by that, but Tuhoi's mana is enhanced by that. And it is almost a unique situation. I don't think this could be applied to many other iwi. Tuhoi have been on that land consistently and constantly. 95% of the people who live in that area are Tuhoi.
Right. Yeah.
So it is. There's no way it's not theirs. It was confiscated for them. It was from them. It was stolen by the government, and really we should have just settled this. And I gather the whispers are that Chris Finlayson, the Treaty Negotiations Minister, is not very pleased at what's happened.
Russell Brown, thanks very much.
Righto.
Cheers. That is Russell Brown at publicaddress.net, Media 7 show on TVNZ.